They're on their way, and I expect them to arrive tonight, Ezra replied. Very well, let's deal with Dustin as soon as possible to avoid further complications, Eleanor said, her gaze cold. Understood. This time, he won't escape. Ezra clenched his fists. Getting rid of Dustin was rather easy. All they needed was a skilled assassin. However, family interests required him to be captured alive, interrogated for any valuable information, and then disposed of. For this matter, the occult master from the Mystic Arts Order was the ideal choice. In a villa in South City, Sinner lay unconscious on a bed, his face pale, his body emaciated. His breath was faint, like a flickering candle in the wind, ready to extinguish at any moment. Dustin stood by the bedside, administering acupuncture and infusing Sinner with pure energy. Not long ago, Sinner's condition had suddenly worsened, and he was on the brink of death. Dustin had intervened in time, using his true energy to extend Sinner's life and pull him back from the brink of death. Phew, soon, Dustin let out a long sigh of relief, finally stabilizing Sinner's condition. At this moment, he was drenched in sweat, having expended tremendous energy. Dustin, how is Mr. Schaffer? Is he going to be all right? Brooke, who had been standing behind Dustin, broke the silence. Brooke had been watching the situation unfold, but there was little he could do. Even with his impressive medical skills, he couldn't help without the right ingredients. Mr. Schaffer is stable for now, but I can't say for how long. We need to gather the ingredients and make the sanctifix as soon as possible to cure him fully, Dustin said, concern etched on his face. Using true energy to prolong life was a temporary solution, not a permanent fix. With time, Mr. Schaffer's condition would deteriorate. If they continued on this path, there would be no way out. It's my fault for not being able to find the other 2 rare herbs, Brooke said, filled with guilt. Despite his reputation in the medical field, he had hoped his connections could help locate the herbs, but he was disappointed. Don't blame yourself, Dr. Bush. Precious herbs can be hard to come by. We can only do what we can and leave the rest to fate. Dustin sighed softly. Let's hope Mr. Schaffer recovers soon, Brooke whispered a silent prayer, his hands clasped together. Suddenly, a faint knock came from the door. Dustin opened it to find Maximus standing outside. What's going on? Dustin asked. Dustin, someone is looking for you outside, Maximus replied. Who is it? Dustin raised an eyebrow. I don't know, but he looks pretty arrogant, Maximus said. All right, let's go see. Dustin decided to see who was it. A black Land Rover was parked at the front gate. A well-built, rugged-looking young man stood with his arms crossed, leaning against the car door. He gave off a cold and aloof demeanor. It was none other than Dexter. Bastard. You finally decided to come out. I thought you were going to play the hermit forever, Dexter grumbled and huffed once he saw Dustin. What are you here for? Dustin asked, puzzled. What? Don't you remember the duel we arranged 3 days ago? Dexter narrowed his eyes. Duel? Oh, I remember now. There was something like that. Dustin nodded and I gave Dexter a quick once-over. So, what's the deal? Is the Fallon family sending you out to play their hand again? Me. Of course, it's not me. The one fighting you today is my older brother Declan, Dexter proudly said. Is your older brother Declan very strong? Dustin casually inquired. Strong? He's not just strong, let me enlighten you. He is recognized as a martial arts prodigy. A few years ago, he joined Celestial Alliance and became a senior disciple of the Enforcement Hall. His cultivation is earth-shattering. Dealing with small fry like you is just child's play. Dexter sneered. All right, enough chit-chat. Let's get in the car. The sooner we're done, the sooner we can finish and go home. I have a lot of things to do, Dustin said, uninterested in prolonging the conversation. Dustin's calm demeanor left Dexter flabbergasted. This bastard wasn't afraid of death. What are you waiting for? Get in the car, Dustin urged. Me. Don't regret it. Dexter gritted his teeth. He hopped into the car, and with a step on the gas pedal, they sped away. An hour later, Dexter slowed down the Land Rover and parked in front of a huge martial arts dojo. The dojo was almost like a school, with various facilities and activities. A stone plaque at the entrance bore the words Celestial Dojo. The Celestial Dojo belonged to the Celestial Alliance. There were 3 major factions that reigned the martial world: the Celestial Alliance, the Mystic Arts Order, and the Sword Union. The Celestial Alliance boasted an impressive army of disciples, with a whopping 100,000 members, most of whom were elites. Among these 3 factions, the Celestial Alliance stood out for its numbers and tremendous influence. Conversely, the Mystic Arts Order was known for its mysterious and deadly techniques. They were a nightmare to those in the martial world. As for the Sword Union, they were famous for one thing: pure strength. The Sword Union's disciples might be few in number, but they're unbelievably powerful. Their disciples were like supernatural prodigies. They kept a low profile, but every time they stepped into the spotlight, it was like setting off a massive explosion. 40 years ago, the martial world witnessed a colossal event that rocked the world. A high-ranking member of the Celestial Alliance crossed the line and picked a fight with one of the Sword Union's disciples. The Sword Union disciple, armed with a single blade, the Sword Union disciple stormed into the Celestial Alliance's headquarters alone. He took on over 100 of the Celestial Alliance's best fighters in an incredible showdown. In the end, the Sword Union disciple met his end. But the Celestial Alliance suffered enormous losses, with 100 of their top warriors either dead or seriously injured. After that, nobody dared to mess with the Sword Union disciples. The Celestial Alliance, which was once considered the strongest, endured a humiliating defeat and a lasting stain on their history. Is this the place for our showdown? Dustin stepped out of the car and looked closely at Celestial Dojo. He had a decent knowledge of the Celestial Alliance. Even though the Celestial Alliance was part of the martial world, it had ties to the government. After all, in order to establish and prosper in Oakvale, there had to be approval from someone at Ailka. No ruler would tolerate uncontrollable chaos so close to home. Dexter didn't hesitate to taunt Dustin. Feeling nervous now? If you're scared, you can just surrender and beg the Fallon family for mercy. Maybe you'll be spared. Dustin replied with a wry grin. Scared? I'm more concerned about the Fallon family disciples preserving their dignity once we finish. Dexter rolled his eyes, replying, You and your retorts. Let's see how brave you really are, Dexter sneered. Follow me inside. Dustin entered the martial arts academy with his hands in his pockets, casually striding in. Dante sat at ease inside the guild's lounge, leisurely sipping his tea. Various men and women were standing beside him, a mix of Fallon family members and a group of elites from the Celestial Dojo. As the two stepped into the dojo, they were met with unwelcoming gazes from the crowd. I didn't expect you to show up here and face the music. I've got to give it to you. You've got some guts, Dante remarked with a sly smile. Over the past few days, he had already sent people to dig into Dustin's background. Dustin came from the southern province, not West Lucosia. Though he had some influence, it was nothing in the eyes of the Fallon family. So, there was no need to hold back in this battle. Sir Dante, whether it's a win or a loss, it's too early for you to celebrate, Dustin responded calmly. What an ignorant young man. Dante shook his head. You should remember we're not in Southern Province but in Oakvale. It's a place teeming with brilliant and gifted individuals. Your meager skills won't cause a ripple here. Sir Dante, if you're itching for a fight, let's not waste more time. I have a lot on my schedule. Dustin yawned as he spoke, looking sleepy. He had been busy with a multitude of tasks lately. He had been occupied with the reconstruction of Harmony Healers, staff training for Dew Balm production, and keeping his eyes peeled for information on the Emerald Corolla and Iceheart Lotus. His relentless back-and-forth travels had nearly exhausted him. If it weren't because the Fallons could be useful to him, he wouldn't have been bothered with them. You insolent brat. Dustin's nonchalant behavior angered the Fallons. They've seen plenty of audacious individuals, but nothing like Dustin's type, who didn't take them seriously at all. He was asking for death. Reese, don't be too arrogant. Once Declan gets here, you'll be crying on the floor, Dexter said darkly.